Hi, my name is Angela. This is my final presentation on my study of navigating misinformation and ways to try and counteract belief perseverance bias. So I'll have the introduction, what belief perseverance bias is, how the study was designed, and what the results were. So to start out, this kind of was inspired by my dad. He has a tendency to, kind of cling on to outdated ideas and beliefs, like, um, there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, even though it's been proven wrong. So kind of started as me being like, why is he like this? And how can I change him? But it's transformed into, can different methods of correcting misinformation affect the persistence of belief perseverance bias? So thanks, Dad. And so to start, I'll explain what belief perseverance bias is. It's different than confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is just intentionally going out and seeking, information to back what you believe. Whereas belief perseverance bias is when we cling on to initial belief even after we've gotten new information that contradicts it. So, for example, there was a study by Johnson and Seifert. They told people a story about a warehouse fire that started, and they thought that it was because of there were flammable materials in a closet. And then they're like, oh, nope, scratch that. There actually weren't any of those. But when the people went back to tell the story and they were asked, why do you think this happened? They consistently kept referring back to these flammable materials. And so this is important because it can have detrimental effects in our real everyday application of use. So if you think about, people saying, oh, transgender individuals are, are dangerous to people in bathrooms. They're going to try and do, creepy shit. Or, what's another one of, sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. Looking at the time, I'm drawing a blank. So I'm going to change the slide and it will probably come to me soon here. Like, for example, another one that comes to mind is like anti-vaxxers. There was one study by a guy who's been stripped of his titles and, completely falsified information, saying that, vaccines cause autism, even though the scientific community and everything has shown that's not true. There's still people who still cling on to that outdated information. So, and we have a lot of it. These are good examples here. We've got the birthers, saying that Obama wasn't born in the United States. Smoking's good for you. There's weapons of mass destruction. Birds aren't real. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so we're looking at, misinformation is that it's maybe unintentional spreading of fake or false news. And then for disinformation, that's anything, it doesn't matter what the intention is, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally spreading false information. We'll refer to that as disinformation in the study here. So the study's looking specifically at misinformation in regards to gender and sex. So it's more focused on the belief that, traditional thoughts of biological sex are XXXY, and gender and sex, now as we know, is a really complicated and nuanced spectrum, and it's not in these strict binaries. So it's looking at, do people still have these outdated beliefs around sex and gender? And if they do, are there ways that we can mitigate these beliefs and, find ways of presenting new information so that people are, on board and able to kind of come up to the times? And so, this particular topic, it is of importance because, when we have these outdated beliefs and we have these fears surrounding things based on misinformation, it can endanger people's lives, especially for transgender individuals. And, with politics and legislation, we are looking at, the implementation of discriminatory laws based on outdated and sometimes just outright untrue information. And also, we have current issues with healthcare and, restricting the rights and access of healthcare to individuals who don't, fall within that strict, male, female binary. Studies, there's already studies about this bias and this effect, and looking at ways at how we can, mitigate this. And what it's been found so far is that, factual corrections, just being like, okay, A, B, and C are true, this is false, it's not as effective as approaching it from an emotional aspect. So storytelling, giving personal examples, humorous anecdotes, and also my study was based on previous findings that before you present the information, giving the participant affirming self-worth statements, or statements that would align with their existing belief systems to mitigate this. So the hypothesis that I have here is that traditional methods, like providing factual information, is going to be less effective than interventions that address emotional factors. And the individuals who receive these affirming statements regarding their self-worth are going to have the greatest reduction in this bias. So for the study, there was 49 total participants. You can kind of read through all of this. It's a lot of information, but the big ones are, we had 17 men, 25 women, 4 transgender non-binary individuals, and 3 people undisclosed. And an age range of 20 to 76 years. I got a bunch of people in my dad's retirement community to help out, which was really great fun to kind of see their results while maintaining their anonymity, right? So the materials I had 3 different videos, instructional videos. The first video was given to all of the groups, and it just kind of went over and highlighted all of the old, outdated information that we have about these topics to try and have that belief perseverance in their head. And then, so the second video is, we had an informational group where it's just factual information presented, and the third video is an affirming emotional. So it affirmed their intelligence and their beliefs and their ability to absorb new information, and then had a very emotional appeal to this new information with personal stories and videos and fun interactives. So after the first video, all of the groups received a questionnaire, and it had 24 different Likert scale questions on it. And then after the second video, they had that same questionnaire, and there was 8 additional statements about the effectiveness or how they felt about the presentation of new information. The measurements that I have, we're looking at the ambivalent sex inventory. So this measures people's levels of ambivalent sexism. The modern homonegativity scale, which is people's attitudes towards sexuality, and outdated belief scale. So this is a scale to measure people's their beliefs in outdated information. And so I kind of went over it. All of the groups, they watched the first video, and then they completed the post-test questionnaire. We had a control group. That was the only thing that they did. And then they were randomly assigned into, the 3 groups: control, group 2, and group 3. So groups 2 and 3 watched those informational and the emotional videos. And then after that, they were given the second questionnaire. The results of it show that with the ambivalent sex scores, in group 2, it was slightly higher levels of sexism, so that indicates that there is a bias there. And then group 3 is lower, so that is a suggestion that it did have a better impact on mitigating the effects of that bias. For the homonegativity scale, slightly lower, I'll fix that typo. It shows, again, there's slightly higher levels of sexism, and in group 3, lower levels of sexism. So we can kind of see the trend here where, the informative, it actually might be compounding and making that bias a little bit stronger here, whereas the emotional appeal is more effective. And the outdated belief scale here, I need to update this title here, but you can see here it's actually kind of the other way around here. So oh no, I lied. So it is higher, the the bias is more likely here because the, oh, words are so hard. Can kind of get it. So they're still clinging on to the old ideas, whereas here they're accepting new ideas. And for the ANOVA, the variance results here between the ASI, there was no statistical significance between the groups, suggesting kind of a minimal effect, whereas between the MHS, the homonegativity scales, there is statistical significance between those two groups. So the observations that I have is the interventions, they did reduce the ASI and the homonegativity scores, and the emotional video showed significant reduction in the ambivalent sexism, and showing that, you know, kind of what we predicted is that the emotional factors might play a key role in mitigating this bias. But there were several limitations. I had a small sample size. There's lack of diversity. Also, we know, the self-report measures could introduce a response bias as well as a social desirability bias, because these are kind of sensitive topics where people might be more likely to lean towards less, sexist or, homonegative views there. And then also, this is a really short-term intervention. It doesn't capture if this actually has long-term potential, or if people are going to just go back to their old belief systems there. So, looking ahead, we know we can see that emotional interventions might be more effective than factual, and that we should, when we're, trying to design interventions to combat misinformation, looking at designing these with more of an emotional or psychological factors approach. And then also in the future, we should start looking at longitudinal assessments. And then also the study, it didn't look at, age, gender, education levels, and looking at how these different demographics might, people may be more or less prone to this bias in these aspects there. So, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful semester. It's a lot. I wish you all well.